All the way back in November 2019, Titans Season 2 finale aired to incredibly disappointing results, but it came with promises for Season 3. In the end of the episode, we see Blackfire take over the body of a mother on Earth, setting her up as the main villain of Season 3. Fast forward to Season 3 itself, and we get a very different season from what we were initially expecting, and from what was initially set up. Right away, Red Hood becomes the main antagonist of the beginning of the season, which was a bit rushed, if not very rushed. Jason's death definitely felt like it came at the right time, as it has been set up since Season 1, and Jason dying has always been a part of his story. However, him becoming Red Hood came way too quickly, and they ended up also doing certain things that are quite irredeemable, which is unfortunate because as the anti-hero Red Hood, Jason is probably my favorite member of the Bat family that isn't Batman. That being said, he at least looked like Red Hood, and he felt like Red Hood, and the actor is really good in the role. So if they go with a spin-off show for Red Hood that completely ignores the continuity of Season 2, much like Doom Patrol did with the show Doom Patrol, I think that would be something that could work out in the end. The same cannot be said about Scarecrow, who is completely butchered on this show. Batman has the greatest rogues gallery in media history, really only rivaled by Spider-Man, and in the DC universe itself, it's like The Flash, but he's like a far second place. You got Joker, Bane, Ra's al Ghul, Riddler, Mr. Freeze, and so many others. And one of my favorites has always been Scarecrow. He has an amazing design, and his fear gas always has huge potential. It can be used to transport Batman into a hallucination world like in Arkham Asylum, or it can force the main characters to truly face their fears and explore what makes them tick, which always makes for some great character development. Scarecrow has always been a formula for success, which is why he's always been done well. He was done well in Batman Begins, one of the best boss battles in the Arkham games, and even as a fantastic main villain in Arkham Knight. He's good in all of the animated shows he appears in, and even in Gotham, they did a really good pre-Batman version of Scarecrow with a really cool live-action design. So it's honestly kind of crazy that Titans screwed him up so spectacularly. The first thing I need to mention is that the main villain wasn't actually Scarecrow. No, it's just Jonathan Crane. Crane literally never wears the mask in this season. He never wears his Scarecrow mask, the signature design aspect of the character, something nearly every other version of the character never takes off, like they wear it 24/7, and the only exception to this is the Batman Begins version, who is pretty creepy without the mask anyway, but also he wears it quite often, and it's a more realistic take on the Batman universe, so all of that is fine. In Titans, however, he never wears it, and the actor is pretty stupid in the role. He's definitely not creepy in the slightest. Plus, he has an entire story arc of trying to prove he doesn't need the mask or the Scarecrow identity to be a competent villain, which is pretty stupid. I mean, really, what were they thinking? Like, who did they make this for? Who did they think wanted to see a season where Scarecrow is the main villain, but it's not actually Scarecrow, it's only his alter ego, Jonathan Crane. I get Crane not having access to the mask up until when he gets to Wayne Manor, but they literally focused on the fact that Batman has Scarecrow's mask as a trophy, and the fact that he gets there, he looks at the mask, he considers wearing it, but then he doesn't ever, is quite laughable. Crane doesn't even look like Scarecrow and doesn't even call himself Scarecrow anymore, and honestly, nobody cares about Jonathan Crane. That was never an interesting part of the Scarecrow character. His alter ego, Jonathan Crane, is something that happens before Scarecrow. Once he becomes Scarecrow, he's just Scarecrow all the time. It'd be like making a Batman movie where he never puts on the Batsuit and has a story arc about how he can be just as effective of a vigilante as Bruce Wayne as he was as Batman. It's idiotic, and I don't understand who they did this for. Aside from the mask problem, there's also a big personality issue. Usually Scarecrow is a scary, deep-voiced, slow-talking, focused individual who can easily intimidate just about anyone. On Titans, however, he's a junkie who's obsessed with getting drugs at any point he can, with mommy issues as his main motivation, and a split personality disorder as he considers Scarecrow as a completely different person to Jonathan Crane. He also talks entirely in quotes. Everything he says, every other thing he says, is just a quote from something, and it usually doesn't really fit that well. He also mentions September a lot for some reason, September coming is some big thing. I mean, if they're gonna go with a month, why not October? I mean, he's Scarecrow, he's a Halloween character, come on. And in terms of personality, he's just nothing like Scarecrow, and it doesn't help that the actor was horribly miscast in the role. I mean, he was he was just so annoying. And the fact that I'm annoyed by Scarecrow and not scared, and that nobody is scared by him, it's just such an unusual decision and direction they went with the character. Also, Scarecrow is not threatening to the Titans at all. Titans does this weird thing where each main villain is weaker than the last one. I mean, you got Trigon, and then Deathstroke, and then Scarecrow, each one being weaker than the last main villain, which just doesn't work because the heroes are becoming stronger. In Season 2, they added Superboy to the team, and in Season 3, Superboy could have just destroyed Scarecrow whenever he wanted to, and it's telling that Dick had to go out of his way to fight Jason by himself by forcing Superboy and Crypto. Crypto could have honestly just ended the conflict by himself to hang back by poisoning them with kryptonite, instead of just letting Connor go to Wayne Manor and simply yeet Crane right out of there. I mean, on the show we have a Kryptonian who could just destroy Scarecrow by himself, 2 Tamaranians, and a member of the Bat family, and for some reason it's never explained why they never just break into Wayne Manor and just take Scarecrow out of there, because what can Scarecrow do to them? Oh wait, they do exactly that with just Nightwing, Beast Boy, and Tim Drake in the season finale. So why did they not do that earlier? Using Scarecrow as the main villain for a season of a Teen Titans show or a Titans show was never really a good idea, because he's not really a big enough threat to be the main villain of a superhero group's team. Sure, he could be a good villain for an episode or two, but beyond that, it's hard to explain why he's still a threat. And even then, it's just really the fear gas psychologically manipulating them that would have made him a real threat for an episode or two, and they never even do that. Scarecrow has like a reverse version of fear gas in the season, at least in the beginning, which removes the fear from the person affected, or later in the season it just straight up kills them, so it's just like regular poisonous gas. Removing fear instead of showing fear makes sense for the character of Jonathan Crane, but it's just not interesting to see on screen. We could have seen Crane individually affect each member of the Titans and show them their greatest fear, which could have been explored throughout the season for some quality character development if that's something the Titans is even capable of doing. But no, they never do that. They only really do that with Dick Grayson, I guess, but it's not even the fear gas, it's the Lazarus Pit, which is not only a waste, but that's a completely different problem on its own. The Lazarus Pit completely takes away any meaning to death. At least on Arrow, the person who came out of it was feral and insane. They had to go through this whole journey to get their soul back, and usually that wouldn't even work. Here, you just throw somebody into the Lazarus Pit, and everybody dies in the season anyway. And if they are strong enough, which I guess everyone is, they'll just come back, not only alive, but completely ridden of all of their PTSD and problems. At least that's what they did with Nightwing, which, by the way, they do every single season. Every single season near the end, he has this dream sequence where he realizes he's a terrible leader and he needs to change, and he never does. He's still an awful leader who poisoned a dog and doesn't let Superboy do what Superboy needs to do. Different takes on comic characters in the media isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes Batman villains have been changed for the better in non-comic media, but taking an already iconic Batman villain who's been done well countless times in movies, TV shows, and video games, and simply removing everything essential to the character down to his design, personality, main weapon, and motivation, and basically everything, is not the way to go about it, especially if the writing for the character is as cringy as it is, and he ends up being a complete non-threat who's just not a good version of the character. Anyway, yeah, like the title said, this version of Scarecrow is maybe the worst live-action Batman villain ever. Okay, so maybe not ever, because, Batman Forever with Riddler and Two-Face, and Batman and Robin with Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, and Bane do exist, so it's not like ever, but in terms of the 21st century, in terms of the last 21 years, he's the worst live-action Batman villain ever, and the fact that it's even close to the Schumacher villains is incredibly embarrassing for Titans.